Hey everyone, Ivan here. Today we're diving into a fascinating economic topic with enormous real-world implications: price controls and their long history of unintended consequences. I want to explore this topic thoroughly. The idea of controlling prices seems so intuitive when inflation strikes. If prices are rising too fast, why not just cap them? But across 40 centuries of history, from ancient Babylon to modern America, governments have repeatedly tried this approach with remarkably consistent results. Today, I'll walk you through what history teaches about price controls, why they keep returning despite their track record, and what alternatives might actually work. Let's dive into the fascinating book, 40 Centuries of Wage and Price Controls: How Not to Fight Inflation by Schuttinger and Butler, along with other research to understand this economic phenomenon. When inflation strikes, the public pressure on governments to do something becomes intense, and it's perfectly understandable why price control seems like a straightforward solution. If bread costs $2 today and $3 tomorrow, why not just decree that bread cannot be sold for more than $2? Problem solved, right? Price controls appeal to our intuitive sense of fairness and our desire for simple solutions to complex problems. Surveys consistently show that despite widespread agreement among economists against price controls, they remain popular with the public. In a 1992 survey, 76.3% of economists agreed that rent controls reduce housing quality and quantity, while 73.9% disagreed that wage price controls are useful for controlling inflation. Throughout history, political leaders have turned to price controls during crises because they offer immediate, visible action. They can point to concrete steps being taken that voters can easily understand. Price controls have an extraordinarily long history. The Code of Hammurabi prescribed prices for goods 4,000 years ago. The problem isn't that price controls are implemented with bad intentions. Quite the opposite. They're almost always enacted to protect consumers, especially vulnerable populations, from rapidly rising prices. But as we see, good intentions don't guarantee good outcomes. To understand why prices controls typically fail, we need to understand how prices function in a market economy. Prices aren't just arbitrary numbers. They're signals that coordinate the actions of millions of people. When a product becomes scarce, rising prices encourage producers to make more while simultaneously encouraging consumers to use less or find alternatives. This balancing mechanism is constantly at work in a functioning market. When price controls set a maximum price below what the market will naturally establish, two immediate effects occur. First, demand increases because the artificially low price makes the product more affordable to more people. Second, supply decreases because producers have less incentive to make or sell the product, especially if their costs are rising. The result is a shortage, more people wanting the product than there are products available. When this happens, alternative mechanisms emerge to distribute the scarce goods. First one is queuing, people standing in long lines to get limited supplies. Second, rationing, formal system to distribute limited quantities. Third, black markets, illegal trading at higher prices. Fourth, quality degradation, skimpflation, where producers cut corners. Fifth, favoritism, products going to those with connections. During World War II, when meat prices were controlled, meat packers began feeling sausages with soy, beans, potatoes, or cracker meal, and adding more fat to hamburgers, a form of skimpflation, to maintain profitability. These mechanisms all introduce their own inefficiencies and costs, which often exceed the benefits of the price controls themselves. Let's look at some particularly instructive examples from history. In the ancient Rome in the late 3rd century AD, Emperor Diocletian attempted to set maximum prices for all commodities throughout the Roman Empire, despite severe penalties, including death. The control failed to stem inflation and ultimately proved unenforceable. During World War II, the U.S. Office of Price Administration employed hundreds of thousands of federal employees and volunteers to administer a complex system of price controls and rationing. While this helped manage wartime inflation, it led to widespread black markets, especially for meat. Modern rent control, long-term rent controls in cities like New York and San Francisco show the cumulative effects of price controls. While protecting some existing tenants, they've contributed to housing shortages, reduced maintenance, and conversion of rental units to condominiums. What's remarkable about these case studies is not just that they fail, but how they fail in similar ways across vastly different times, places, and economic systems. The underlying economic principles remain constant. Price controls aren't just ineffective, they often create worse problems than they solve. Here are the most common unintended consequences. Shortages. When a price ceiling prevents the market from clearing, the result is excess demand, more people wanting to buy than there are products available. This leads to shortages and empty shelves. Black markets, when legal channels can supply goods at controlled prices. Illegal markets emerge. These typically lack consumer protections and quality controls, and often involve criminal elements. Quality degradation. When businesses can just adjust prices upward, they often adjust quality downward, what economists call skimpflation, serving a smaller portion or using cheaper ingredients while maintaining the same price. Reduced investment. Price control industries attract less investment, leading to long-term supply problems and stagnant innovation. Administrative burden. Effective price control systems require extensive bureaucracy and enforcement mechanisms, creating significant costs for taxpayers and businesses. Suppress inflations. Price controls often don't eliminate inflation, they simply suppress it temporarily, leading to even higher inflation when controls are eventually removed. The cumulative weight of these unintended consequences explains why economists across the political spectrum remain skeptical of price controls as a policy tool. Despite their poor track record, are there specific situations where price controls might be justified? Some economists suggest there are limited circumstances. Monopoly situations, when a single seller controls market monopoly or a single buyer dominates monopsony, price controls might improve market outcomes. A price ceiling on a monopolist may increase output and lower prices toward competitive levels. Short-term emergencies. During wartime or acute emergencies, temporary price controls might have stabilizing psychological effect by preventing panic, buying, and preserving social cohesion. Temporary transitions. When an economy needs to transition from one system to another, such as from control to a market economy, gradual removal of existing controls might be preferable to sudden deregulation. Natural monopolies. Industries with network effects or high fixed costs that tend toward natural monopoly, like certain utilities, may benefit from regulated pricing. However, even in these cases, price control should generally be narrowly targeted, temporarily with clear sunset provisions, accompanied by supply-side measures regularly evaluated for effectiveness. The evidence suggests that broad, long-term price controls almost always create more problems than they solve. If price controls aren't the answer to inflation and high prices, what alternatives might work better? Monetary policy. Most economists agree that inflation is fundamentally a monetary phenomenon caused by excess money growth. Central bank policies that manage the money supply can address inflation at its source. Fiscal policy. Government spending and taxation decisions influence inflation. Reducing deficit spending during inflationary periods can help reduce demand pull inflation. Supply-side solutions. Addressing the too few goods side of the inflation equation by removing regulatory barriers, addressing supply chains bottlenecks, and incentivizing production can reduce prices more sustainably than controls. Targeted relief. Rather than controlling prices for everyone, governments can provide direct financial assistance to vulnerable populations most affected by inflation. Increasing competition, breaking up monopolistic industries, and encouraging new market entrants can naturally drive down prices through competitive pressure rather than mandate. Innovation support. Government support for research and development that increases productivity and efficiency can lower costs naturally over time. These alternatives may lack the immediate visibility and simplicity of price controls, but they address the underlying causes of inflation rather than just masking symptoms. After reviewing 40 centuries of price control experiments, a clear pattern emerges. Despite good intentions, price controls consistently fail to achieve their objectives while creating significant unintended consequences. As Schrödinger and Butler write in their book, the repeated attempts at price controls throughout history represent a series of natural experiments demonstrating again and again the futility of attempting to ignore economic reality. The temptation to implement price controls is understandable, especially during periods of high inflation or economic stress. They offer a straightforward, visible response that resonates with voters' desire for immediate action. But history suggests we'd be better served by policies that address the root causes of inflation and high prices: monetary discipline, fiscal responsibility, supply-side improvements, targeted reliefs, and competitive markets. Understanding this history is crucial because, as a philosopher George Santayana famously observed, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And with price controls, we've been repeating the same experiment for 4,000 years. Thanks for watching, and if you found this video insightful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more honest, evidence-based content. Check the description for a list of recommended books and resources on this topic, including 40 Centuries of Wage and Price Controls, and other valuable sources. This is Ivan helping you understand the economic realities behind today's headlines, and see you in the next video.